They didn't just discourage him, they actively tried to stop him. Studio executives, financial advisors, industry insiders, all telling Clint Eastwood the same thing: this movie would fail. He made it anyway. And what happened next shocked Hollywood. It was early 1990, and a screenplay was making its way through Hollywood, collecting rejection letters like souvenirs. The script was called The William Money Killings, written by a relatively unknown screenwriter named David Webb Peoples. It was a Western, dark and violent, about an aging gunfighter pulled back into his old life for one final job. Every major studio had passed on it. The reason was simple. Westerns were dead. They'd been dead for years. Throughout the 1980s, Western after Western had bombed at the box office. Heaven's Gate had nearly destroyed United Artists. Silverado underperformed. Even Clint's own Pale Rider in 1985, while profitable, hadn't set the world on fire. By 1990, the conventional wisdom in Hollywood was clear. No one wanted to see cowboys anymore. The script eventually landed on Clint Eastwood's desk through his production company, Malpazzo. He read it in one sitting. Then he read it again. Something about the story resonated with him. It was about age, about violence, about regret. It was everything Hollywood didn't want to make, which made Clint want to make it even more. But when he told people he wanted to produce and direct this film and star in it himself at age 60, the response was immediate and unanimous: don't do it. His agent was the first to express concern. He came to Clint's office with a folder full of box office reports. He spread them out on the desk like evidence in a trial. Westerns don't work anymore, Clint. Look at these numbers. Young Guns 2 did okay, but that's because it had young stars and MTV appeal. This script you want to do? It's about old men, killing, regret. Where's the audience for that? Clint listened quietly, the way he always did. His agent continued, gaining momentum. You've got a great career going. You're doing well with your cop films. People love those. Why risk it on a genre that's been dead for a decade? When his agent finished, Clint simply said, "I like the script." That was all. No defense, no argument, just a statement of fact. The studio executives at Warner Brothers were next. They'd backed Clint's films for years, and they valued their relationship with him. But this project made them nervous. They scheduled a meeting, bringing in marketing analysts and financial projections. The conference room was full of people in expensive suits, all armed with data about why this film shouldn't be made. "We love you, Clint," the studio head began. "You know that. But we have to look at this practically. Westerns are poison at the box office right now. The demographic that used to watch them is aging out. Young audiences aren't interested. And this script, it's so dark. The hero is a murderer trying to do one last bad thing. Where's the redemption? Where's the hope?" Another executive jumped in. "Plus, and I hate to say this, but you'd be playing a character who's past his prime. You're 60 years old. Are audiences going to pay to watch that?" The room went silent after that comment, everyone realizing it had gone a step too far. Clint didn't react with anger. He asked a simple question. "Have you read the script?" The executive admitted he'd only read coverage, not the actual screenplay. Clint nodded slowly. "Maybe read it first." The studio suggested alternatives. They had other projects lined up, action films, modern thrillers, things they knew would work. They could get those greenlit immediately. Big budgets, major releases. Why gamble on an old Western? But Clint kept saying the same thing. "I want to make this film." His friends in the industry were equally concerned. Directors he'd worked with over the years called to offer advice. "Clint, you've got nothing to prove. You've made great Westerns already. Why go back to a well that's run dry?" Actor friends suggested he star in other people's films instead. Let someone else take the risk of directing a Western. Even some members of his own production team at Malpazzo expressed doubts. They'd been with him for years, and they'd never questioned his judgment before. But this felt different. One producer pulled him aside after a meeting. "We can make this film," he said, "but I have to ask, why? What are we trying to prove here?" Clint's answer was characteristic in its simplicity. "It's a good story that deserves to be told." The financial advisors weighed in next. They ran the numbers every possible way. Even with a modest budget, even with Clint deferring his salary, The film would need to make at least $50 million domestically just to break even. Westerns hadn't hit those numbers in years. They presented alternative investments, other projects that made more financial sense. One advisor was particularly blunt. "Clint, you could lose a significant amount of money on this. Is that really worth it?" But the resistance wasn't just about money or box office projections. Some people in Hollywood were genuinely concerned about Clint's legacy. He'd built an incredible career. He was respected, successful, still making viable films. Why risk all of that on a genre everyone knew was finished? Why potentially end his career on a failure? A veteran producer who'd known Clint for decades took him to lunch. "I'm going to be honest with you," he said. "If this film fails, and I think it will, people are going to say you were out of touch. They're going to say you couldn't let go of the past. Is that how you want to be remembered?" Through all of this, Clint remained calm and resolute. He didn't argue. He didn't defend. He simply moved forward with the project. He secured financing through Warner Brothers, though on a much smaller budget than his recent films. $11 million, modest even by 1991 standards. If the studio was going to let him make this movie, he'd have to do it cheaply. But the resistance didn't stop once production began. During pre-production, studio executives kept suggesting changes. Maybe make it less violent, maybe make the hero more likable. Maybe add a younger character that audiences could relate to. Maybe set it in the present day instead of the Old West. Each suggestion was politely declined. When filming began in Alberta, Canada in August 1991, some crew members were skeptical. They'd worked on westerns before and they'd seen them flop. One cinematographer admitted later that he took the job because he needed the work, not because he believed in the project. The attitude on set wasn't hostile, but there was doubt in the air. Clint directed the way he always did, efficiently, quietly, with minimal fuss. He knew exactly what he wanted, but even some of the actors had questions. Gene Hackman, playing the brutal sheriff Little Bill Daggett, asked Clint during rehearsals, "Are you sure audiences are going to accept this? This character is so dark, so cruel, there's no redemption for him." Clint's response was simple. "That's why it's honest." Production wrapped in September 1991. Post-production proceeded through the fall and winter. As the release date approached, August 1992, the marketing department at Warner Brothers struggled with how to sell the film. Early test screenings produced mixed results. Some audiences loved it, others found it too slow, too dark, too old-fashioned. The studio began preparing for a moderate release, nothing like the wide launches they gave their tentpole films. Industry insiders who heard about the test screenings started circulating predictions. Trade publications ran articles questioning whether Clint Eastwood had miscalculated. One particularly harsh piece suggested that the film represented the last gasp of a dying genre by a director unwilling to accept that times have changed. Warner Brothers, hedging their bets, scheduled the release for early August, a dumping ground for films the studio wasn't confident about. Summer blockbuster season was winding down. This was when studios released movies they needed to get into theaters but didn't expect much from. The final pre-release meeting at Warner Brothers was tense. Marketing presented their modest campaign. Publicity outlined their limited press strategy. Everyone in that room was preparing for a film that would come and go quietly. One executive asked Clint if he wanted to do extensive publicity to try to boost opening weekend numbers. Clint declined. "The movie will speak for itself." Unforgiven was released on August 7, 1992. The first weekend box office numbers came in, $15 million, respectable but not spectacular. The studio executives nodded, their expectations confirmed. A decent opening, probably a quick fade. They'd break even, maybe make a small profit. It was better than the disaster some had predicted, but nothing special. Then something unexpected happened. The film didn't fade. The second weekend, it dropped only 20%, unusual for a Western. Critics' reviews started appearing, and they weren't just good, they were rapturous. Roger Ebert called it a masterpiece. The New York Times declared it the finest Western since the genre's heyday. Word of mouth began building. By the third week, Unforgiven was still in the top 5 at the box office. By week 4, it was expanding to more theaters instead of contracting. The studio, seeing what was happening, shifted strategy completely. They poured more money into marketing. They pushed for award consideration. The film they'd been ready to write off was becoming a phenomenon. The financial results came first. Unforgiven went on to gross $101 million domestically, more than double what the financial advisors had said was impossible for a Western. Worldwide, it made $159 million against its $14 million budget. It was one of the most profitable films of 1992, but the real vindication came on March 29, 1993, at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion in Los Angeles, the 65th Academy Awards. Unforgiven had received 9 Oscar nominations, and people were taking it seriously. The same industry that had told Clint not to make this film was now celebrating it. The awards started coming early in the night. Best Supporting Actor for Gene Hackman, Best Film Editing. As the evening progressed, it became clear this wasn't just recognition. It was a sweep. When Jack Nicholson opened the envelope for Best Director and read Clint Eastwood's name, the pavilion erupted. The standing ovation lasted more than a minute. Clint walked to the stage, humble as always, and gave a characteristically brief acceptance speech. But there was one more award: Best Picture. When Unforgiven won, Clint returned to the stage. This time his speech was a little longer. He thanked the cast and crew, the studio, everyone who'd believed in the film. But he didn't mention the doubters. He didn't need to. His presence on that stage, holding 2 Oscars at age 62, said everything. 4 Oscars total, 9 nominations, over $150 million at the box office, and unanimous critical acclaim, calling it one of the greatest Westerns ever made. Every person who'd told Clint to stop, every executive who'd said Westerns were dead, every advisor who'd warned about his legacy, they were all wrong. The film's success did something even more remarkable. It revitalized an entire genre. Suddenly, Hollywood was interested in Westerns again. In the years that followed, films like Tombstone, Wyatt Earp, and eventually Open Range and 3:10 to Yuma got greenlit. An entire generation of filmmakers cited Unforgiven as inspiration. The genre everyone had declared dead was alive again, and it was because one man had refused to accept that conventional wisdom. More than 30 years later, Unforgiven is considered not just one of the greatest Westerns ever made, but one of the greatest films ever made, period. It appears on every significant best of list. Film schools study its screenplay, its direction, its deconstruction of Western mythology. The American Film Institute ranks it among the top 100 American films of all time. The lesson from Clint Eastwood's persistence with Unforgiven isn't about stubbornness or ego. It's about conviction. He saw something in that dark, unglamorous script that no one else saw. He understood that just because a genre was out of fashion didn't mean it was creatively exhausted. He trusted his instinct over conventional wisdom, and he was willing to risk failure to make something he believed in. Every executive who tried to stop him had perfectly logical reasons. The financial data supported their position. The box office history backed them up. On paper, they were right to be concerned, but they were looking at data, not the script. They were analyzing trends, not the story. They couldn't see what Clint saw because they weren't looking at the same thing. In the end, the story of Unforgiven is about more than just a successful film. It's about the difference between following data and following instinct. It's about having the courage to pursue something you believe in, even when everyone with authority and expertise is telling you you're wrong. It's about understanding that sometimes the safest choice is the riskiest one, and the risky choice is the one that matters. They told him to stop. He didn't, and he was right.